Or you can buy it from Pure Talk for half of that. I'm talking about unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data for just $34.99 a month. Stop paying the big guys twice what you need to. Dial pound 250, say my name. That's pound 250 micro to switch to Pure Talk, where the savings are truly unlimited.
You're probably listening to this in your car, so let me ask you. Would you drive without insurance? Of course not. So why is your retirement portfolio unprotected? Gold is portfolio insurance. It helps de-risk your savings when markets get unpredictable. Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of Americans do exactly that with no high-pressure sales and thousands of 5-star reviews. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult with your tax or financial professional before making any investment decisions.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
What an incredible week for the good guys, for America, for freedom, for liberty, for achievement, and for capitalism.
It's also, again, it just shows how much he doesn't know. I know people talk about him as a genius, but to me, I think he's probably one of the dumbest, luckiest people to exist on this earth.
Now that sexual deviant who married her brother with the laundry on her head, that stupid pig, has done more damage to America than almost any other alien, illegal, temporary protected, let alone domestic Democrat in America. And she is talking about Elon Musk, who it's hard to quantify. Did he increase the American economy $3 trillion, $4 trillion, and how many millionaires did he make, let alone the convenience of what he touches and invents? That's capitalism. My next guest knows this all too well, as he has been studying it with a vest and lapels. EJ Antoni, rocking the Van Dyke. How are you?
Shaun, I'm doing well. I'm regretting some life choices these days. I'm thinking, why was I not working as a janitor at SpaceX? Because that guy is now doing better than I am today. He is wealthier than me because Elon had the foresight to compensate him with not just salary and benefits, but with equity in the company too, and literally made the guy a millionaire overnight when SpaceX went public.
And what I love about this year and what we're living through is the silver lining in the reality of what we face. The argument is really this simple. The people who want to keep their money versus the people who want to take it away. It's that simple. It's that simple. And all of these people who want to take other people's money away are conspiracy theorists, as I see it. I mean, after all, it's a conspiracy theory to think that there's universal health care. Barack Obama was going to lower your premiums. It's a conspiracy theory to think that fake Indian, who looks like Chuck Connors, is going to bring you housing, is going to bring you any kind of quality of life through their policies of waste, fraud, and abuse. So I've decided from now on to call the American National Socialist Worker Party exactly what they are, American Nazis, and identify the frauds for what they are. The face of greed, the insatiable greed that cannot finance their own food, their own housing, their own health care, and are going to tell you how virtuous it is to take somebody else's.
You know, it's amazing, Shaun, when we look at a guy like Elon Musk. He is such a great example. And I'm a big defender of his, not because I agree with him on everything, I don't, but because this is a guy who, for years, he was that guy who never slept. He worked all day long. When he did sleep, he slept on the factory floor, whether it's SpaceX or at Tesla. He didn't even own a home. He would talk about how, home ownership would just kind of slow me down, and if I owned a home, I wouldn't have as much time to devote to work. I mean, that was the kind of guy that he was and still is, really, right? So in other words, he was that story we hear about, that American dream, if you will, where if you just work hard enough, you can literally do anything, right? And he is that American success story. But the left hates that because it defies the narrative that you were just so well articulating, Shaun. This whole idea that, you know what, the system is rigged against you. There is some kind of grand conspiracy. The billionaires are holding you down, et cetera, et cetera. When the harsh reality is, you know what, it is a system where those who work hardest win. And if you're willing to outwork everybody else and to sacrifice countless things in your life in order to win, then guess what? You're going to do that.
And you know what else fascinates me? The only real monopoly, the only existing monopoly in this country, in the world, is the one who points the fingers and pretends it's breaking up monopolies. The only monopoly in this country is government. Government is the only true monopoly, the extortion monopoly. And, you know, it's fascinating because as you look back at Elon, you know, and I'm not just talking, you could go back to when he was new to this country, what he brought to it. When you go back through PayPal, what that did, how that rocked the world. PayPal figured out how to eliminate the necessity to have closing day funds values of currency. I don't know if you know that. You know that. Instantaneously, completely giving you the immediate translation from yen to dollar, from boon to dollar, from whatever currency you wanted to trade in, and paying you immediately. Up until PayPal, you had to wait till settlement. And you would have the fungiation, you'd go overnight, and all the rest of it. It did it. And I'm telling you, I've always believed that's why I believe it was shelved. Because if you remember, PayPal was acquired by eBay, and then all of a sudden, nobody used it. So it's a fascinating reality when you look at what those PayPal, they're called the PayPal Mafia. There's a great book on it. You'd love it. PayPal Mafia, you got to check it out for yourself. But when you look at what he's done his whole life, and you go back to him and the stories of him as a kid, aside from never sleeping and sleeping on the floor when he had to and working, not owning a house, the reason he is what he is isn't just the achievement. It's the dreaming. And did you ever hear his father talk about what teachers wanted to do to him?
No, I have not heard that.
Here's Elon Musk's father. And you got to understand where he grew up, very government central control, top-down totalitarian, kind of the same thing all these Democrat areas want to do in America. And the teachers wanted to medicate him.
When I went into the headmaster's office, there was this older lady, I think she was obviously the teacher, wringing her hands, you know, and looking terribly unhappy. And the headmaster was a very good man. He said to me, your son is retarded. We think your son is retarded. Of course, I knew Elon wasn't retarded. So I said, well, why? Why do you say that? And they said, well, yesterday, again, he sits and stares out of the window while everybody's taking note in the class. The other kids are taking note. He sits up and stares out of the window. And she said nothing she does gets his attention. And she actually went up to him, as she explained, and she would pushed him on the shoulder before we jump around and look at her. And then she said, what? He asked him, why? What are you doing? And he said, look, the trees are getting green, or you know, they're all getting leaves or something to that effect. So I thought, well, that's a reasonable. I didn't see anything wrong with that.
So he was a consummate dreamer. You know, and if you just take into account what we have allowed these incompetent boobs pretending to be teachers, what they have done to our children, how many Elons did they already put on drugs and change the course of history itself? Thank God Elon's father said, no. You don't know my kid better than I know my kid. But look at what we do. We have school systems that lower standards of testing because they don't want the results to be given out loud. They would rather dope kids. More kids are on dope than at any time in history, rather than teach them. And just take a look at what this one man did since he was a boy, from dreams to product to productivity to enriching billions and billions of people. And when you look at Starlink, you know, that's half the reason. Starlink is 1,000 times better than Comcast, and Comcast has been bribing the Democrats to have the monopoly it has over the stronghold. And that's why the Democrats hate him. But I love the fact he keeps winning, and we keep winning, because the market is hot. The growth is in the private sector. It's expanding and growing all the time. The Democrat morons like Obama keep promising to deliver utopia, and they deliver ghettos. This is an easy argument to have, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Wow, Shaun, so much to unpack there. A lot of fertile territory here. Look, teaching is predominantly a liberal field, or maybe a better way to say that is it is dominated
it's a government
by
monopoly.
liberals.
Yeah,
right, exactly. And for whatever reason, it just attracts a lot of liberals. I don't know if it's the power imbalance between pupil and student. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not that kind of doctor. So I don't know why that's the case, but it's very clear that is the case. And so it's not surprising then that you find a lot of people in the teaching field with these very liberal ideologies. And part of the whole gospel of envy on which liberalism is based is this denial, really, that people can create wealth, that people can dream, that people can change the world, et cetera. I know the left likes to talk about that. They talk about it a lot, but actions speak louder than words. And what their actions say is that, no, people on their own can't change anything. You need the heavy hand of government to take away people's liberties in order to actually change things, which, of course, never works well. But that's what they ultimately believe. And again, you can tell that based on their actions. So it's not surprising then that you have a teacher who talked to Elon that way, who thought that about Elon and made those kinds of recommendations to Elon's father. It's not surprising at all. And that is a perfect parallel to what's going on today with AOC, with Elizabeth Warren, right? With all of those crazy folks, where they somehow think that Elon has taken from other people in order to create wealth. That's not how wealth is created. No. The reason they think that, though, is because in their positions, since they don't know how to create wealth, they only know how to steal. They only know how to take it from the hardworking Americans. They only know how to take it from taxpayers, how to transfer from A to B. They don't know that A can actually create the wealth and then sell it to B, and both can be better off.
So are you ready for this? Because I've looked at this my whole life, and I've lived it my whole life. And you say you're not a psychologist, but you are a doctor, you handsome son of a gun. And you're an economist. There is no better antidote to the fraud of psychology than what you are. You're fact-based, result-based. And it's a fascinating reality, and I think some people are too good to see how bad people can be. And when you look at these teachers, most of them, and you saw this in Chicago specifically, but not exclusively, they don't want to work. Don't you remember in COVID that dizzy pig who wanted the school shut down and she was caught on Instagram with her hat on vacation? That's the quintessential Chicago public school teacher. They are good for nothing. And they would rather have a room full of doped up kids. And the reason, EJ, is the same reason they're Democrats. They hate success and those that would succeed. They don't want to take the chance that kids could grow up and be Elon Musk. They don't like success, which is why they are so comfortable wallowing in failure, claiming to be virtuous. That's the get. They're virtuous as they destroy education. They're virtuous as 18 out of 100 kids can read, less can do math. They're the teacher instead of being ashamed, of which each and every one of them should be as they watch the news, because all these perpetrators are all Chicago public school kids. All these break-ins, all their students. And as society pays $33,000 a head in Chicago, $43,000 in New York, the teachers, rather than have shame, demand more money, because the true face of greed is always the Marxist, the communist, the socialist. And they want it for nothing in the same way their constituents want their rent and their food for nothing. This is good versus evil. This isn't economics. There are no economics. There are conspiracy theories to socialism and Marxism and communism. There's no economics. The economic is bankruptcy. So I'm to the point now where I don't ever want to have the argument, and Elon Musk proves beyond a shadow of a doubt all of my allegations. What do you think about that?
Yeah, very true, Shaun. And I think what you're describing and what we've been sadly observing in the Chicago area, basically, and not just Chicago, New York City, right, L.A., you name it, a host of other cities, all of which are run by liberals, of course. what we're observing is modern day serfdom or a modern day slavery. Maybe I don't think that's too harsh to say that.
No,
it is creating literally a permanent underclass, which can never, because they have this victimhood mentality and because they've been deprived of acquiring any kind of skills, they have nothing other than to live off the dole. And so, again, it creates this kind of permanent underclass who will perpetually vote for whoever promises them the most benefits, the most goodies, the most, essentially the most government transfers, of course, at taxpayer expense. It's about a permanent voting base, which is also a permanent underclass.
absolutely. And you know what's fascinating? One of the things that Trump, and you and I talk about this, right? And what he does is, whether he wants to admit it or not, he represents a third party. But as I look at, I'm in studio in Chicago here, in this area, and they have on the garbage stations that never make it in my studio, Xanadu in Florida. So you have Jonah Goldberg on, you have Stephen Hayes, you have the Never Trumpers, right? And then you look back at what these guys really represent. They represent the Fabians, as I used to call it. But when you look at these Bush people, these Bush Republicans, these Mitt Romney, and you look at the way in which they're taught from the time they enter college and they're all members of that Skull and Bones and that society, most people don't realize these are societies that are built on top-down collectivism of one form or another. Skull and Bones is a German socialist. They differ from the Nazis just minuscule ways, but they differ. Fabians are the same thing as Marxists, but they differ just minuscule ways. And these are the governments they prefer, where you live in serfdom. And it's mediocrity, or it's equality through mediocrity. And as you look at the erosion of what used to be the middle class, it's fascinating, EJ, to come back to Illinois and look at how the Illinoisans accept the multi-layer of taxation on gas, on water, on electricity, how they tolerate the decades of corruption between the only true monopolies, government and their favorite corrupt companies like ComEd and the rest of it. It's riddled in scandal, and there are no choices. ComEd's got you, and you're never getting out of it. So it's really amazing how people would rather look at it and say, you know what? The only way for me to really get out of it is to get in on it. Because after all, it's better to be in on the scam than finance it. So now you've got the tipping block of state workers, municipal workers, county workers versus the citizen who makes a third of what they make. So you've got these little fiefdoms, these Democrat areas, that are Soviet states. And if you're a Democrat state, you're a Soviet state, and you run on Soviet economics, don't you?
Yeah, and Shaun, it really is amazing. You hit on something really important there, how we've just become desensitized, I think is the way to put it. It really is shocking how you go to some of these areas in the country where people are taxed to death, where businesses get regulated to death, right? And it's such a stark contrast. When I was out there recently with you, traveling between Illinois and Indiana, again, seeing the difference there in the business climate alone. And it's amazing how, again, it's as if people have just become desensitized. It's like that old analogy, how it's like the frog in the boiling water, right? And if you start the water cold, the frog's happy, and you can slowly heat up the water and cook it to death, as long as you just don't do it too quickly. And that really, again, seems like a good analogy for what has happened in places like Chicago, Illinois more broadly, but again, other liberal states like Massachusetts, like New York, and so on, Michigan, California, right, Oregon. Yeah. And so as we have become desensitized, we've forgotten how things used to be. We've forgotten, for example, that the middle class in this country, a guy with a high school diploma could have a family. He could have 3 kids. He could own his own home. His wife could stay home and make a home and not have to go to work herself. Like that was normal at one point in this country before the cost of living exploded, before Leviathan grew in size, etc.
And that's the system the government supremacist hates. Because after all, if a guy like me, a guy like I met a wonderful kid, he's a man, a wonderful guy yesterday, bricklayer, came up with an invention. He's got a great idea. If he becomes a billionaire, well, he didn't follow their path. He didn't go to Harvard. He didn't go to Yale. That's why I'm telling you, EJ, if you could have been with us when we would go to these private clubs in Chicago, and the Sears Tower used to have the Metropolitan Club, and we'd walk in there, a bunch of meatheads with our trading jackets on, and you'd see these pseudo-intellectual frauds, these ass-suck-on businessmen, so they're called, and all they did was kiss their boss's ass. Nobody knew what the hell they did. And they would look at these guys. These punks don't need anybody. They make more money. They hated it. That's when you see the cultivated envy. And those guys today, you know what they are? The vast majority of them, they're recipients of government contracts. They're lobbyists. They're fraudster banksters. It's amazing to see how they still are miserable, even though they got everything they wanted. There is no more Merck. There are no more guys. There's no more businesses. And they still walk around with that arrogance of superiority. And that's the problem I have with it, because these are easy areas to see. Since those days, the businesses are selling at 95% less than they used to be, or the buildings are selling 95% less. The businesses we used to go to, none of them are there. I don't even think the Metropolitan Club is there. So they live in the reality of their own failure, and yet they still pretend to be onto something. And to watch these schemes, in Illinois, they got two big industries, dope and gambling, right? So I had a caller before you came on. He said, how does Illinois charge taxes in revenue? Well, it's multi-layered, just like they do gas. They have something called a cultivation privilege tax. Did you ever hear of that? That means if you grow it or whatever the case is, however you get it here, you pay 7% on it. That's before it hits the shelves. Now you've got tiered excise taxes on the strength of the marijuana. And on top of that, you've got retail tax. So you're taxing it 3 times, making certain it's high enough so that black market dope dealers can sell it too. And they call whatever they get from it revenue, regardless of the fact how many of the recipients are on welfare. Because after all, government welfare people can never be taxpayers. They live on government welfare. And then you look at the video gaming. One state, broke-ass, bust-ass state, near $4 billion a year in ghetto gaming. How many of them are on welfare? And the money goes out of state. Those companies, vast majority of them, aren't owned in Illinois. So they make their money, whoop, they're gone. And they pay here's a third for the state. You guys are cut in on it. So it's really a scheme that only could exist because other decent states and the federal government bail it out. And that's why we've got this debt explosion since Obama, isn't it?
Yeah, sounds a lot like bread and circuses, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Well, let's just make sure we're handing these people food. That's the welfare. And let's make sure we give them something to entertain them, to distract them from the disasters that are going on as a result of failed public policy. That's the gambling. So, again, there's nothing new under the sun, Shaun, right? We've talked about that a lot. This is essentially one government failure trying to cover up for previous government failures and nothing more. That's genuinely all it is. And it only works as long as good people work. In other words, as long as you, your listeners, myself, as long as we're out there actually producing something that people want, actually generating wealth, earning our own income, that's the only way the government actually has a tax base to take money from and actually fund all of this nonsense. But as more and more people leave Illinois, the state has been hemorrhaging its most powerful resource, its most important resource, people, for how many years now? As that continues, you know what? Eventually the music's going to stop.
Yeah, well, they're going to fight off the investigations, but it's fun to watch Gavin Newsom's wife finally get some attention. I mean, after all, he's been running her to NGOs in the same way little Dick Durbin, the senator, put his portly wife up as a lobbyist. Did they think we weren't on to the fact they put up their spouses and their moron kids as bagmen? This is getting fun, isn't it?
Well, fun, that's one F word for it.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to see you again. So stay in touch. I just got a little thing. Shaun Fest is going to be at the end of summer. You got a first place invitation. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. Ooh. Yeah, a lot of people. Free. It's free for everybody to come. So we'll key you in. Don't worry. I'll give you a special text when we get off the air. But I would love to see you again, and I love, more importantly, watching you give them the business on these shows that used to be propaganda. EJ Antoni, the Heritage. We all love you here at the show, so thank you.
Hey, Shaun, it's always my pleasure. Great to talk to you.
You too. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Broadcasting from the petri dish of corruption known as the state of Illinois.
In the upper Midwest, the nation, and around the world.
This is the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
It is that time of year again to save babies by providing ultrasounds with our friends at Preborn. You know how this goes. We've done it every single year at this time. All you have to do is pick up the phone and say, I want to provide a free ultrasound to a girl. Give her the chance to see the truth of what's happening in her body. Every $28 helps do that, saving one baby. $280 can do that, help save 10 babies. More does more. The phone number is 833-850-2229. 833-850-BABY. Join us saving babies with Preborn again this year. We're going to save hundreds of babies, one at a time, 2 or 5 or 10 at a time. That phone number again is 833-850-BABY. That's 833-850-2229. Or go online to 560theanswer.com/baby.
Stuck in Illinois? Between the taxes, the politics, the weather, it's exhausting. But leaving isn't as simple as packing up and going. That's where leavingil.com